Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, this is my second podcast on here. My main one, Mod Chat, is a bit more structured, a bit more edited, where I come on at least once a month and I talk about some things that I find new or interesting or what have you in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. Do a little bit of show and tell, kind of share what's going on, and also give my opinion here and there, although it's not necessarily a news show. However, this is not that. This is Mario's Minute, where I come on here once a month and I pretty much talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on here, sometimes I don't, and overall there's not too much going on here, at least visually. If you are checking it out on the YouTube, Rumble, or Odyssey channels, you can jump into the conversation in the comment section and such. However, there's not too much visually. It's kind of just my channel art with a cool looking visualizer. At least I think it's a cool one. However, I did say that this is a podcast, and if you want to take it around and listen to it wherever the hell you want to, like an actual podcast, you certainly can do so by looking up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, platform, site, whatever it might be. I know it's not available on all the places, but it's available on most of them, at least. Either way, as I said, this is where I come on. I talk to you all about whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't, and this month is going to be a solo episode. Last month's episode, I did have a guest. It was Slot One Gamer, and definitely a fun one. So if you are interested in some of the more, hacky bits and some, modding chatter and such, that's a good episode in my opinion to listen to. But again, we're just going to be talking about, a few random things here, and I do have a few of those things listed out. So I actually have several Xbox related things. I don't think I'm going to get to all of them, so we don't, Xbox ourselves out here, so to speak. But I did have a story that I definitely wanted to share. Now, I will say this is going to be a little bit of a Mario's Minute exclusive, because I was really close to making a video about this, but I said, you know what, no, I'm going to go into, some more granular detail and such, and I'm just going to share this on the podcast here. And this is how Geek Squad ended up messing with one of my friend's money, made him spend way too much on things. And a little bit of background here, right? For those who do not know, especially if you're outside the United States, Best Buy is one of the bigger, more well-known, big electronic chain stores. It's been around for several decades at this point, and they have a tech-centric, I guess you can say, add-on within their store called Geek Squad. Now, Geek Squad, their job is they help with, I believe, like at-home installations of, let's say, if someone, they do have certain services, like you can get like Geek Squad protection, and let's say if you need help hooking up your computer, if you buy a new TV, you need help hooking it up, you need to get your computer online, what have you, there are things for that. They also do hardware and software repairs. So, for example, if you have a computer that has a virus on it, you could take it in there. If you have a computer and for some reason it's not turning on, you could take it in there. Although some people might be yelling at me that I'm giving them too much credit, I guess you can say. And this is kind of where the good stuff ends, because all that stuff I said, they do. However, you do have to keep a few things in mind. First of all, it's annoyingly expensive. I just know whenever I've looked at prices, I've been surprised. I believe even to take things in and just to have them look at it, unless they've changed their ways, there's many things, like if they could just do a quick like cursory overview of something, then they don't charge you. But if it's like a more intense hardware issue, they do have to spend some time on it, and they charge you just for the diagnosis of it. And even just the cost of looking at your hardware, it was more than I expected from what I remember. Again, I'm not sure if that has changed, because I've been completely out of the loop with all the Geek Squad stuff. I have gotten in a little bit when like I've had some friends who've worked there, they've told me stories and such, but for the most part, it's one of those places where they don't do as much as you would expect. The things they do are definitely overpriced, at least in my opinion. And when it comes down to it, a lot of the people I know who have been good, they either don't stay there very long, or if they end up staying there, they're just constantly frustrated at a lot of the rules and regulations and limitations that they have, just knowing that they could do a much better job if they had complete full reign on what they want to do with their own software and such. I'll give you all an example here. I'm sure they do the same thing now, except it's more probably just with a USB drive. But let's say 10, 12 years ago, when disk drives in laptops and desktops were a lot more accessible, when it was more of a standard. Let's say you had a computer that you were running into an issue where your video driver was not loaded up properly, or there was a virus. Let's just say it was that, right? Something really general. You could have someone bring their laptop or their desktop in, and they weren't really manually doing all too much. Like, they wouldn't like delve in with specialized tools or really like go into the registry and hand pick the all the dependencies and such that are infected and like pull those out at that level, which I have done before. Annoying, but kind of fun at the same time. No, what they would do is they would take that desktop or laptop, hook it up to power, hook it up to their test bench, and they would take a CD or a DVD that had pretty much the Geek Squad suite and array of software needed to clean up stuff, pop it in, turn on the computer, run it in there, and everything was automated. Smart, sure, but from what I know, the software wasn't the best. There was better offerings out there. That's just what Best Buy and Geek Squad was able to do. And the reason why I tell this story is because doing that doesn't involve any type of technical know-how. Even the people I know who had worked there or knew people who worked there, they even straight up said, they're like, yeah, no, the stuff we use at home, the software we use like on friends' computers and stuff, it's way better. Like this stuff is junk. We hate using it, but we have to use it. But yeah, you don't need to know anything. As long as you know how to put a CD into a computer and turn it on, it's going to do all the heavy lifting for you. So that's kind of a little bit of a background over Geek Squad and how they are not as great, if you didn't know about that. I did tell this story in a previous episode of, not Mod Chat, of Mario's Minute here, but real quick before I delve into it, I'll just give this precursor because this was the exact moment I pretty much just stopped caring about them at all or really cared about their opinion on this, right? I had gone to them a few times when I was growing up and I wasn't as technical. And now looking back, pretty much every time I went there, they gave me incorrect information every time. And it was different employees, different stores, different time periods, always Geek Squad. That was the one common denominator right there. But I had a laptop, a Asus U56E, which after it had come out, it's now well known that, at least in that community, if you look it up, that the Wi-Fi board on there is faulty. And it will just, keep disconnecting you and such after a certain period of time. And the only way to really fix it is to reseat it. Even if you replace the thing, unfortunately, it's just a design fault itself. So you have to open up the laptop and reseat the Wi-Fi card and then put it back together. And the problem is it's one of those cards where you have to take apart the whole laptop to get to it. So it's not great, but I was running into this. I bought this laptop. It was an Asus from Best Buy. So I still had the 1-year warranty on it. And when I contacted Asus, they said, well, we can't, in order for us to look at it, you have to take it to Geek Squad and they have to diagnose it with an issue. Don't worry, it's going to be free. Just take your laptop to Geek Squad. I took it there. They had it for less than a business day. They gave it back to me and they said, there's no issue with the hardware. It's all software. You have viruses on your laptop. And at this point, I was pretty on top of, my cleanliness when it came to spyware, malware, antivirus, all that stuff, right? So I immediately knew this was wrong. So I pushed them a little bit. I said, hey, so what viruses were you seeing? And they said, we found it. There was 2 viruses on your laptop. One of them was Google Update.exe. And I was like, that's the Chrome updater. And they said, well, yeah, but that's how viruses work. What they do is they disguise themselves like legitimate programs. So it looked like it was Google Update, but no, your Google Update.exe was actually a virus. And I just took my laptop and I said, okay, thank you for letting me know. I walked out of the store, never attempted anything with Geek Squad after that. The reason why I know that's complete BS is because the detail I forgot to mention is that when I got my laptop, I was able to make a recovery image right off the bat and burn it to some DVDs. So it was kind of like getting an official reinstall DVD from Asus themselves. And before I took my laptop in there, the only things I did was, one, I ran those DVDs, so I completely wiped the laptop and put the original factory image on there. And number 2, I connected to the internet, went to ninite.com, built myself a little install package, and then downloaded and installed several just basic applications right off the rip. One of them being Google Chrome. So I knew with certainty there was no way this thing had viruses on it. But they were trying to say that the Google Chrome updater was a virus. That's to show you all how not great they were, and that was back in 2012. Getting into this, though, one of my friends, he owns a business. It's not a technical business at all, but my girlfriend and I, we go to it pretty frequently. So I had gone there, and we talk, like my friend and I, we talk about video games and such. I guess him and his son are pretty big gamers. And a few years ago, he ended up getting his son a pretty nice desktop. It has like a 11 series Intel i7 and a RTX 3080. I believe that's what it is. And then it had 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I think it was actually an Asus as well. It was an Asus Republic of Gamers desktop. Not my favorite looking one. I personally didn't like how it looked, but he seemed to be happy with it. So from what I know, at one point last month, he ended up, he as in the son, ended up pouring a beverage onto the desktop on accident. And I immediately, I screamed when I heard that. And then on top of that, the desktop stopped working. I didn't know to what extent it stopped working. So then he ended up taking it into Geek Squad. I ended up yelling again about this. And at this point, my girlfriend was trying to calm me down because there was also a few customers there. And since I'm friends with them, usually I let loose a little bit. But I was like, no. I know I should be a little professional around the customers, but this is a very offensive story to me so far. So he took it to Geek Squad, and Geek Squad looked at the desktop and said, sorry, this desktop cannot be repaired. It is unrepairable. We're not going to be able to look at it, and we actually suggest that you just buy a whole new desktop. So I'm yelling about that too. And the last thing to end off this story here was that my friend then, and this is a personal thing, I guess, with it, you can whatever on here. He ended up getting his son a new desktop. So I just got mad because I essentially told him, I said, dude, it's like you had a brand new in quotes, but it's like you had you bought a car brand new, you took care of it for 2 years, it has an oil leak, and it's like you took it to the dealership and the dealership told you there's no way to fix this, you just have to get a brand new car. That's it. And you ended up doing that. You got a brand new car. And he was like, I know. And then apparently his assistant there was even he could have reached out to you, and I was like, you could have reached out to me. He's like, I know, but I didn't want to bug you on it. But I just told him after I calmed down, I was like, look, do you still have the desktop? He said yes. I was like, if you'd like me to, I can take a look at it. No promises I can fix it, but I do not believe Geek Squad when they say it's unrepairable. And he's like, sure, I can bring it by and you can look at it. So the next time we end up going, I end up taking the desktop. He brought it out of his office and he was like, yeah, if you want to take a look at it, go ahead. I said, all right, cool. Let me take a look. So put it in my car, eventually took it back home. And when I looked at it, you could tell because it's a black desktop, there was signs of some kind of liquid that had dried on the outside of the case. He still has no idea what this beverage was or is. But my first thought was, okay, if it got all over the motherboard, that's going to be a little bit of an issue, right? So I just do the basic thing. I don't, try to take anything apart just yet. I take the desktop, I hook it up to power, I hook it up to HDMI, I turn it on. The thing fires up, but there's nothing displaying on my TV. And I waited, a minute, 2 minutes, but everything seems to be running. But then I turn it off, turn it back on, same issue. Turn it off again. I went to start taking it apart, and it was only then that I noticed that the GPU and one of the exhaust fans were not hooked up to power. So I was a little offended because I'm like, wait a minute, I know my friend did not open up this desktop. I know his son did not open up this desktop. I know that Geek Squad was the last people who were inside of this computer here, which shows me, because this thing was working before, it shows me that they did a little bit of basic troubleshooting, but they couldn't even bother to reconnect one of the fans and especially the GPU. And that would have messed up anybody who wasn't super technical, because let's say if my friend took his desktop home and he decided to give it a shot and try to troubleshoot it, he would have been trying to hook up, HDMI to the thing, and even if, let's say, the computer ended up being okay, if he didn't take it apart, he could have hooked it up to his GPU and said, oh, well, I'm hooking it up and I can't get any video output, so clearly the computer is definitely busted. And that's, I feel like, what a lot of people would have thought there. So absolutely disappointing right off the rip. You all might be thinking it was an easy fix there. It wasn't quite what you were thinking. I ended up, opened it up, hooked up the fan, hooked up the GPU, fired it up again, exact same thing. Everything is running and spinning, but there's no issues. But I did notice that there was a LED on the motherboard because there was like several indicator LEDs that show like, I think one of them was like, I think they were like CPU, DRAM, VGA. Yes, it did say VGA. I'm not outdated. It said VGA on the silk screen, and boot, meaning, the motherboard successfully posted. But I noticed one of the lights was staying on. However, in my head, because I had liquid damage in the back of my head, not literally, but that's kind of what I was thinking with this, I said, okay, something probably spilled on the motherboard, which is causing an issue. So I disconnected everything. I started opening up the desktop. I took off, the M2 SSD, the GPU, the CPU, the cooler, disconnected everything, ended up pulling out the motherboard. The motherboard looked fine to me. And then I ended up getting a spare tub. I cleaned it out. Then I ended up using like an entire big tube of 99% isopropyl alcohol, and I ended up giving it a alcohol bath. I had never done that before on a motherboard, and I used it in my guest bathroom here, and my eyes were tearing up from just the fumes and so much alcohol concentration all at once. But I let it sit in there for a good amount of time. Then I ended up draining out the alcohol. I, let it dry for maybe 4 or 5 hours. Then I put it back together. Ended up putting all the components back on, put it back into the case itself, tightened everything up, turned it on, exact same situation. So then I decided to take a little bit of a closer look at that one LED I was talking about. And this is... I'm glad I ended up cleaning up the motherboard, right? Because that didn't make the situation worse. At minimum, it just didn't change the situation. But I looked at one of the LEDs, and I noticed the LED that was staying lit was DRAM. So this computer had 2 sticks of RAM, and I said, let me try this out here. I noticed they were actually in the wrong slots, at least to me. They were in A2 and B2. And I said, well, there's only 2 sticks of RAM. They should be in A1 and B1. So I switched them over, turned it on, nothing. Tried to switch the sticks around, turned it on, nothing. Put them back in A2, B2, nothing. Then I said, I don't really have any spare RAM on deck, but let me just rip it out of my own desktop. Because my desktop has DDR4 RAM, his desktop has DDR4 RAM. Let's give this a shot. I took out both of these RAM sticks, which, by the way, with pre-built typically the companies are going to cheap out on components, and one of the components they cheaped out on was the RAM, which to me was a little bit surprising because this case was designed to be see-through. So, nice, colorful LEDs and all that. I'm not crazy into that. But they put like the most basic looking RAM in there. I'd even showed my girlfriend later on, like I showed her, like, this is what my RAM looks like, and this is what his RAM looks like. And at first she thought I pulled out something from the 80s and I was joking with her. And then she just looked at the comparison and she's like, that's not even fair. Like, that's not fair. So what happened was I took out 1 stick of RAM from my computer, popped it in, turned it on. All of a sudden, the computer starts making all these noises. Fans are whirring. This thing is like revving to life. All these LEDs start firing off, start disappearing, coming on, coming off. Then all of a sudden, the motherboard posts. And I'm like, are you kidding me? So the unfixable issue with this desktop was that the RAM went bad. Now, it could have been just 1 stick of RAM that went bad, sure, because I didn't diagnose which one it was. However, it ended up being a RAM issue, which, here's the thing, if you're doing any type of computer troubleshooting like this, that is not anything that is intense. I didn't have to pull out a soldering iron. I didn't have to replace any specific integrated like circuits or like ICs, integrated chips, I guess you can say. I didn't have to do any like component level repair. I didn't have to do anything advanced on this. Replacing RAM when it comes to doing like a hardware repair on a computer is something that's basic. And that infuriated me, in all honesty, because I was like, they should have, like, Geek Squad should have figured this out. Geek Squad should have known about this here. Geek Squad should have tried this. The fact that I ended up diagnosing this as a bad RAM issue and I was able to show that it was working, and Geek Squad said that it was unrepairable, to me showed that they didn't do any sort of proper troubleshooting or diagnosis. So it was incredibly disappointing. But I ended up calling up my friend after I tested a few times, and I said, hey, so guess what? He asked, is it about the computer? I said, yeah, your computer's working. He's like, wait, what? I said, yeah, your computer's working. I have it loaded up right here. This is your son's name, right? It showed up on my screen. And he's like, what? And so I told him about, the things that were disconnected, and I told him about the troubleshooting. I said, first of all, your motherboard is clean. I made sure of that because I gave it a nice alcohol bath. But secondly, it's going to be RAM. So he asked, okay, how do we fix it? I said, oh, well, we just need to buy you a new kit of RAM, install it, and this computer should be good to go. That's it. So we ended up finding a kit for him. I, talked a little bit. Originally, it had 16 gigabytes of RAM, so I sent him a 16 gigabyte kit. However, I did say, if you want to, though, since we're replacing the RAM and we have it open, you could just upgrade this if you want to. So for a little bit more money, for let's say less than $60, I want to say, we ended up upgrading this to much nicer RAM, prettier looking RAM as well too, because it has LEDs and stuff and it looks cooler, and the screen, not the screen, the case is see-through. But for less than $60, we ended up upgrading this machine and replaced the RAM from 16 gigabyte to 32 gigabytes. So that wasn't the end of it there. Then the funny troubleshooting stuff was, I talked with him about it and he wanted to buy the RAM himself. And then he said, yeah, if you want to just drop off the computer, that's fine. If it's just installing RAM, I'm pretty sure I can do that. A little bit of a mistake on my part. But I said, okay, I'm going to trust it. And I'd even said, I was telling my girlfriend about this, the repair and stuff. And I said, typically I like to make sure everything is working, up and running and working before it leaves my office. And that way, once it leaves my office, once I give it to you, it changes hands. I'm like, that's it. It's on you. The last time I saw it, it was working tip-top. So you all can maybe predict what's going to happen here. The next part of this was the next day I ended up taking the desktop back over to his place. Went over to his business and I said, hey, I need to go real quick. Sorry about that. I know the RAM is supposed to be coming. I just got to drop this off and then I got to run. He appreciated it. I left. About an hour later, he starts texting me and he asked hey, so I put in the RAM and it's not displaying anything. And I tried to walk him through it a little bit, and he was saying, no, I tried both sticks, I tried to switch it around, and it's still not displaying anything. And I said, okay, before I head home, I'm out right now, but before I head home, I'll drop by. And he said, no worries. So about maybe 2 hours later, I dropped by, and he had the desktop out. He showed me the RAM. He said, hey, here's the old RAM, here's the new stuff. I only tried one stick at a time. Is that okay? I said, yeah, that's fine. So I opened it up, and, put the computer on its side, and I touched the RAM, and it wasn't even hooked up. It was just sitting in there. And I was like, oh, I know what the issue is. And he asked what the issue is. I said, okay, you see how the RAM is sitting? I asked, is this how you installed it? And he said, yeah, that's how you install it, right? I said, no, it's okay. You're making it a mistake that many people do, because it's kind of scary when you hook up RAM. This is what you have to do. Right now, the RAM is just sitting in there, but in order to actually install it, you have to push down on it, and I want you to watch this here, because it's going to make a really horrifying sound, and it's going to crunch, and then it's going to click in place, and that is what you need. And sure enough, I pushed down, it made the horrible, crunching sound, and it clicked, and when it clicked, I said, that's what you're looking for. He said, oh, it didn't do that with me. And I told him, it's fine, that hangs up a lot of people, and it's kind of a scary process. That right there, installing RAM, scares a lot of people who haven't done it before, or they've rarely done it. So I took both sticks, I plugged them in, turned the computer on, hooked it up to HDMI. All of a sudden, it's starting to run through everything here. It is making some more noise, but I noticed that the motherboard was still not posting, and this time around the VGA light came on. So we tried, disconnecting, reconnecting it from HDMI, trying a few other things. And after trying a few things, I just turned it back off, made sure everything was connected properly, turned it on. This time around, all the lights lit up properly, and then they turned off, and they came on, turned off. It was able to post. And I was like, I think we're getting there. And even he said, he commented, he's like, yeah, no, the desktop did not do that before. It was not doing that when I tried it. And I'm like, okay, so that's a good sign here. So it was literally just roaring to life. And then when it calmed down, we ended up switching the TV's HDMI, and boom, it was showing up. So then everybody was happy about it at that point. And I said, okay, we're good. Now the case is open. Do you want to close it yourself? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to close it up. I opened it. I can close it. I was like, okay, cool. Have a nice day. So that's the long story there, it's been extended out, I guess you can say, but that was the entire process of getting that desktop and troubleshooting it. And meanwhile, mind you, with all of that, right, it costs in parts less than $60 to fix that up. And I actually looked this up on Geek Squad. I did a quick search just to see how much it would have been to replace RAM. And apparently, the process of replacing RAM, and I mean, it's for people who don't want to do it, I would say it's affordable. But if you see how easy it is to do, it's shocking, I guess, in my opinion. $40. It would have cost them $40, excluding the parts, to install 2 sticks of RAM, and that would have been it. So it was incredibly disappointing that, again, Geek Squad said that this computer was not repairable, and they advised him to buy a whole new computer. And this was not like a 20-year-old computer. This is not like your grandfather's old Dell Latitude, right? This was a computer that was no more than 3 years old. It has a 11th generation i7 on there, and one of the like unclocked variants as well too, and it also had a RTX 3080, so it's still an incredibly capable machine. It just needed that RAM replacement. So I did end up telling a few friends about this here, and one of them used to end up working at Geek Squad, and he ended up telling me this, so I explained the issue to him. And he had said to give Geek Squad the slightest benefit of the doubt, they intentionally don't mess with liquid damage. Too high of a risk for catastrophic failure/days loss. That said, if there were no blown caps on the board, I would have at least pulled the RAM, CPU, GPU, and put them on a test bed. Now, funny thing, he also told me this here too. Fun fact, most stores don't have test beds. We took a few boards off the shelf and took them out of inventory for testing. We were trained to handle liquid damage as a death sentence for liability reasons. It was annoying. So, I told him essentially, I said, thank you, that actually makes a lot more sense. The explanation, I can appreciate it. However, here's the thing. If Geek Squad gave my friend that same explanation, I would have been okay with it. I wouldn't have been ranting. I would have just been annoyed, right? But that's not what they told my friend. They did not tell my friend, we don't cover water damage. We don't look at stuff with water damage. We don't mess with water damage. We don't diagnose, liquid damage on this. They just straight up said, this is unrepairable. We can't fix this here, and you just need to get a new computer. Again, if they'd explained their policy in regards to liquid damage, I would have been okay with that. The other thing that I ended up getting, was one of my other friends. Now, the other thing was one of my other friends, I told him about this story, and he does not work at Geek Squad, but he does work at Best Buy. And he told me that, yeah, it was in regards to the fan and the GPU that were disconnected. He said, it does sound like a really nice conspiracy theory, like, oh, they disconnected this so that it wouldn't be repairable or easily repairable by someone who doesn't know what they're doing, so therefore Best Buy can then sell them another computer and they can sell warranties on top of it. And he said that's a really fun kind of conspiracy or like rabbit hole to go down, and it does make sense on paper. However, him just kind of honestly looking at it, he said he doesn't think that was the case. Unless there was something nefarious there, unless like Geek Squad is being heavily pushed now to not fix things and to just sell things, unless something like that has changed and he doesn't know for sure because he doesn't work at Geek Squad, he said to him, it just sounds like negligence there. They just were testing it. They might have been rushed. They just didn't care all too much about it there. And they just said, well, the thing is broken already, so they just didn't pay attention and didn't hook up a fan and a GPU back to it. Which, again, is not to excuse them, but more just to explain what might have happened. Either way, incredibly disappointing there overall. I can say with this, if you're one of those people, if you've ever gone to Geek Squad, I wouldn't recommend going to Geek Squad. If you're one of those people who you're just not too technical and you're going to trust some others with that, I would say, first of all, look some things up yourself. Fixing up a computer, fixing up laptops and all that, a lot of times it's not going to be as scary as you expect with it there. On top of that, if you can't do that, it might just be better to maybe have like a trusted friend or a trusted family member work on it, as opposed to Geek Squad or maybe even another shop. Worst case scenario, if you're going to go to another shop, you might want to go to a smaller or locally owned shop where you're actually talking to the shopkeeper. Don't go to a big place like Geek Squad where they are trying to maximize as much money as they can. They have a lot of overhead to cover, and they're trying to spend as little time on your hardware and software as possible, because they just want to maximize their revenue, and that's all that they're caring about in that regard. So that's my opinion on that overall there. Maybe last thing on that, though, if you're going to go with the friend or family member route on that, do them a favor of some kind. Buy them a meal, do something else there. And of course, if they have to buy any parts, you're going to be covering those parts as well. Just don't annoy them in that regard. Don't abuse that power. You still want your friend or family member to still be your friend or friendly with you by the end of this. So yeah, that's what ended up happening with that desktop there. Now, not desktop related, but this is in regards to the original Xbox One. I am talking about, as it is lovingly called, and I believe, I don't think there's been enough flowers dropped for this. I feel like, even though it hasn't originated from this, I feel like, shout out to a friend MVG or Modern Vintage Gamer, I feel like he's the one who really pushed the VCR moniker for this, because I had just noticed that people compared it to a VCR for a while, but it wasn't until he started calling it the VCR, like the Xbox One VCR, in his videos, and then other people started saying it, and then you had publications that started saying it. Kind of like mistakes were made, He might not have been the one who pioneered it, but I feel like he's the one who really pushed it out there, and then people kind of started following and referencing that. Not just other YouTubers, but companies as well, too. I swear, and he called it out once, but I swear there was one time, at least once, that Microsoft ended up referencing mistakes were made in one of their, Xbox showcases. So, either way, we are going back to the original Xbox One, the VCR unit, and this has been fixed now. However, this was originally posted July, no, not then, but it was posted in July of this year, right? So it's a little bit of an older one. It was from Eurogamer and thankfully from Digital Foundry. However, they had talked about this, and they said that the original Xbox One was failing to update, and it was kind of just bricking these systems. Now, this had nothing to do with mods, it had nothing to do with upgrades, it had nothing to do with licenses or connectivity or any of that. Very simple. Imagine you had a Xbox One from 2013, 2014, you bought it then, and imagine you just haven't booted it up, you haven't taken it online, you haven't updated it since maybe 2017, 2018, right? You decide you want to play it, to play a game or just have like a Netflix machine or something. So you take it out of the box, you hook it up to your internet connection, turn it on, and you're prompted to update, of course, because you have to take the latest kernel update in order to, connect online, get your apps sorted, all that stuff. And it just fails to update. It tries, and then it fails. You could even download a OSU, so an offline system update, from Microsoft themselves, put it on a USB drive, go through the recovery menu process for that, and it still does not update. And that's it. It's just, it apparently only affected the original Xbox One, not the One S, not the One X, not any of the series consoles, and it only affected these systems. It wasn't even specific dashboards. It was just these dashboards or kernel versions that just haven't been updated for years. So with this, I can say that I do have a Xbox One that I don't think I have turned on since 2017, maybe 2018, and it would have been one of these same type of situations where if I tried, it would have been bricked. Because the other thing is too, you can't update the system. So because you can't update the system, if you try to wipe the system, the first thing you do when you wipe the system and it boots back up and initializes is it needs to download the latest update. If it can't download the latest update, you can't do anything with that system. It's bricked at that point. It's a soft brick. You can't do anything with it. Even keeping that system offline, there's a lot that you cannot do. Microsoft might not have done the whole totalitarian type of online only restriction and like 24-hour check-in service that the Xbox One was originally supposed to have back in 2013, but they have done a really good job of making you become super reliant on the Xbox Live service if you have a Xbox One or a Xbox Series. Because even with these systems right here, it's just, there was a lot that you could not do if you can only keep it offline, unfortunately. Now, it seems that they ended up reporting this to Microsoft, and within a few days, Microsoft did have it fixed up, which is good. Props to them. And some people might even be wondering, well, who's on that old original Xbox One? Who's on that VCR model? Like, you shouldn't even be using that to begin with. You just need to throw that out. I mean, first of all, there's still uses for these things. There's still, some need for them as well, too. Secondly, we're not trying to just, create a whole bunch of e-waste. And third, there's nothing wrong with the hardware. The hardware was perfectly fine. Even if, let's say, the hard drive died on there was ways to replace the hard drive. The problem is, this console was made unusable because of a network issue, because of a network service issue or a network service glitch. And at that point, you're just reliant on Microsoft. What if they chose to ignore this? What if they chose to not fix this? What if this is the process, like the services, the network services went completely offline? At that point, you have this piece of hardware which works perfectly fine, but you're limited to not even the software, you're limited to the network at that point. And I believe we've seen some of this before with is it the Philips Sonos? There was some speakers, I think it was like Philips Sonos like smart speakers, where the speakers were perfectly fine, nothing wrong with them, but because of some changes with how they're wanting to produce speakers and such and introducing a new model, they ended up just bricking the old models completely. So you had to keep these speakers online on your network, and at a certain date and time, they would end up cutting service to them. So the only thing you could do with these speakers is just throw them away. And some people might say, okay, I'll just take my speakers offline. The only way to use them as designed was to be online. And that's definitely a really depressing and disappointing feature of the Xbox One, the Xbox Series, having such a strong and almost required connection to being online. And this is actually what people were afraid of back in 2013. Back in 2012, when this was all being theorized on here. And even if some people say, oh, it's the Xbox One VCR, they don't care. What if it happened to the Xbox One S? What if it happened to the One X? What if it happened to the Series X or the Series S? What if it happened with one of those systems? If it was one of the newer, more capable systems, people would have been in a giant uproar about this. And keep in mind, this could have happened for those models as well, too. Why did it only impact the original Xbox One? We're not sure. So that's a little bit disappointing there. I will say before I break off from this here, at least, well, less disappointing, at least it ended up being resolved. But I will say that I guess one benefit or one thing I still like to reference on here, one of my favorite old school YouTubers, the Blackbuster Critic, and he's been through several different channels, but I think his current channel is the Blackbuster Show. I found him through his Guidelines to Being a Customer series, where he worked at Blockbuster at the time, and he was just ranting about how it was to work at Blockbuster, and it was very cathartic watching those videos about how do I put it, after working in a retail shop. However, he ended up to the release, and I think even after the release a bit of the Xbox One, he was very anti-Xbox One. He is incredibly pro-consumer, pro-PC. He doesn't say PC is a personal computer. He says it stands for personal choice, and PC gives you all of the choices available to you, so that's kind of where he sits at it. But he had this whole thing about anti-Xbox One news, and anytime there was some anti-Xbox One news, he would make a video about it. And even I myself, being an Xbox One fan at the time who was looking forward to getting it, I still watched that because I like to see, both sides of the argument there, but also, I also very much liked him as a YouTuber. Still do, of course, he just doesn't really do the content thing anymore. However, a long, short way of saying that there was even sometimes there would be some news that was like, oh, this is definitely against the Xbox One. He would say, actually, it's not. And he would come in and, explain why it wasn't a big deal. But the one video he has, which still holds up to this day, is he ended up making a video, and you could say it's a little bit clickbaity, but it's still true. Unfortunately, even in 2024, it's that the Xbox One and extended to the series, the Xbox Series, these consoles have a 100% brick rate, a 100% failure rate. Because you see, if you end up going to the store, you buy a brand new Xbox One or Xbox Series and you take it home, the only thing you can do with that console is connect it to Xbox Live and get it updated. But without an internet access, especially Xbox Live internet access, without that access, you cannot use the system. You can't watch a movie on it. You can't listen to a CD on it. You can't play a game. You can't install applications. You can't install any games. The only thing that you can do is connect it online and get the latest update installed on that system. That is all it is capable of doing, and if you do not have internet access, you have a brick right there. The only thing it does is look for an internet connection in order to get connected. And that's why he said that it has a 100% failure rate, and it comes dead on arrival. And I can't really think of much else like this, but he even makes a point in his videos asking, like, name me one other product that is like this. And I'll be honest, I have to struggle with it in terms of consumer products. Now, there might be maybe some more like enterprise level products where, yeah, you do have to go through an initialization and registration process to use it, but that's enterprise. But I'm talking about these older systems. Like, I don't even realize, this is something I kind of forget at times, I don't even realize how nice that is until I'm working on like an Xbox 360, for example, and completely offline, I can take it out of a bag if I got it in a bag, from a Craigslist transaction or something, hook it up to my TV, turn it on, everything is usable. I can take a disc, pop it in, play it, install that disc to 100%, play that game just fine, make an account. And after all that testing, I then realize, oh, I haven't even connected it online, but the system works perfectly fine. So those are a few issues there with that. And this is the reality that a lot of people were not happy about, because they said this can happen, and look, it can still happen. It did happen already, and it can still happen again. So I wanted to kind of start slowing down, wrapping up here a little bit, and I want to talk about the games that I'm currently playing. So I am playing just a handful of games right now, nothing all too new. I'm still doing the Ring Fit Adventure thing. Now, I wasn't good on it for a couple weeks. I did have someone visiting at one point, and then I had to travel for a little bit. So there was a couple weeks where I just wasn't getting my workouts in, but I've been good about it again. I'm back on it. I'm doing it minimum once a day, Monday through Friday, so I keep it to my work weeks, or my work days, I guess you can say. So end up still playing that. What was the other game I'm playing right now? Still playing a little bit of Mario Party Superstars. I'm actually getting excited for Jamboree. It's kind of funny because that's kind of the game I'm most excited for this year. I know there's other games like Silent Hill 2 is going to be coming out. There's been a bunch of great games that have come out, but I'm like, here's the thing. Actually, let me pull up how many hours I have on this, and I don't even think it's all too intense on here, but if I can, okay, I have a custom theme on here, so I have to actually look. Pulling this up, yeah, if I go to my profile on my Switch, I actually thought I had more on here. So Mario Party Superstars, it's kind of a favorite that my friends and I will play together when we have our game nights and stuff, and I have at least 50 hours on there. Ring Fit Adventure, I do have 265 hours on there, so that's good at least, but I am looking forward to the new one that's supposed to be coming out, I believe, next month. However, I did start playing my PS5 a little bit again. Big thanks to Slot One Gamer, actually, for recommending this game. It was at the end of the last episode. It seemed like such a good recommendation that I ended up picking up a physical copy of it, which was a little hard to find at first, and thankfully, I almost bought a overpriced copy, and then I slept on it, and the next day, Amazon had it in stock for MSRP, so I got it. It still wakes the deep on PS5. I'm about halfway through it right now. It's funny because when I booted it up, I looked at how good it looked. I was just astounded at how good it looked. And my girlfriend and I were talking about it, and I was like, well, wait, I just realized I'm kind of impressed at how good it looks because I kind of play on the Switch a lot. So yeah, just seeing that was funny. But it's a great looking game, definitely spookier than I expected, pretty intense, and the development studio behind it, I believe it's called the Chinese Room. They've done a few other games that I've played as well too, and this is unlike any of the other games that I have played by them and that they have developed. So they definitely went much darker, much more intense, much grittier on here, and It's great so far. I will say it's been funny because there's just I think this game can get a rated M just from the language alone. I'm not trying to be a prude here, but there's just so much cussing to an almost constant basis that's happening in the game, and it takes place in Scotland. And it was like at the point where like my girlfriend's kind of like cringing and it was making her uncomfortable. And I was like, look, I have friends who are in Scotland, and apparently this is just kind of how it is. Like, these aren't even like cuss words to them. It's just part of their regular vocabulary. So this is just how they be talking. And I think it was also much worse back then too, because I think the game takes place in like 1975 or so. So that's been funny to see at least and see the reactions. But there's been that Mario Party Superstars. I was talking about that because her and I actually ended up playing it recently. She hasn't played it before. So she was playing it with me. We had a couple bots on there, and I might have kicked her butt a little bit, and she was a little bit annoyed by it, but I was like, look, I play this like at least every few weeks with friends. So yeah, like I'm still gonna have fun. I'm still gonna I essentially said, I figured I'm still gonna have fun with this. I'm not going to be one of those people who like brags about my skill set, my win and all that. But I'm also not really going to go easy on a significant other. Although I was showing her how to play the certain mini games and all that. She wasn't too happy about one of them where it was you're trying to like get in place in front of a camera to get a photo taken of yourself, and she was like positioned properly and got it, and at the very last second I end up squishing her, got her literally completely out of frame. So there was that. But yeah, those are some of the games that I've been playing here. Now for the last thing I wanted to cover is a game store story. Now, for those who do not know, typically I share these at the end of these solo episodes, and when I was in high school from about 2009, 2011, for about two and a half years or so, I worked at a local mom and pop video game store. I had two locations. I worked at the second location, the bigger one, a lot more, and it was a job that I did enjoy and still when I look at favorably because it was my first job that I had. It's my only retail job in that regard I had, but it was one of like the best and worst jobs at the same time. I really liked the discounts I got. I liked my coworkers. I liked the experiences, but at the same time, I didn't play games for a while when I was there, like not nearly to the extent that I even try to do sometimes now, just because when you're around them all the time and the people there, like the, customers that will come in, it's still a retail job at the end of the day. So it kind of burns you out there. And that's something I've heard from a lot of like video game store employees. But either way, I did want to share this here because this was how we ended up getting some of our new games. And it was always a little bit perplexing, but, we'll go ahead and talk about it. So, originally, we were only doing used games. We were buying and selling used. That was it. We weren't doing new games because my boss, he had talked about it with us, and he essentially said, look, we're just a small retail shop. We really don't be getting discounts like that. Like, we're not going to sell the games for $60 new. We're probably going to sell them for $55, but we can't get really crazy discounts. Like a brand new game ends up coming out, we might give like $25 cash for it, right? And then we turn around and we sell it for $50. That's a good profit margin. A brand new game comes out, we can buy it for maybe $52, $53, and then we turn around and sell it for $55 instead of $60. But then guess what? After a few weeks, the price on that game is going to drop. So all of a sudden, we spent $53 on this game. We have to sell it for $50, and then maybe $45, and then $40. So when it came to the numbers there, he just didn't see it. But then when we opened up a new store, we started to stock a few games. What we would do is we would, if people wanted to pre-order with us, we would make sure we got those games. But if it just came to be like a new game that was, interested and people were wanting to pick it up, then we would get typically 2 or 3 copies. And I think the first brand new game we got, I think it was Duke Nukem Forever, which is kind of a little poetic unto itself too. But what ended up happening was originally he was going through a distributor, and it was just annoying because like we would have to wait for release day, and then we don't even have it an opening on release day. We have to wait for FedEx to come by. FedEx comes in, it's a certified package, it requires a signature, and if the boss is not there, then the FedEx has to go take the package and they have to come back later on and try again in a few hours. So it was just not a good system. But at our second location, there was a Toys R Us nearby. And I'm not bringing up Toys R Us just for the memories and all that of it, no. This was back when Toys R Us ended up selling video games, if you can believe it or not. I think in the end they stopped doing it, but for a while it was actually a pretty good game plug. Now, it was funny because it just got to the point where we said, hey, look, we're not going to be doing this, right? I don't remember the exact hours, but I think Toys R Us opened like an hour before we did. So what we would do is on release day for a game, we would go to the shop a little early. Whoever had the keys, they would open the shop, do their thing, and they would lock the door, go over to Toys R Us, get a few copies of the latest game, still sealed, bring them over, and then we put it in our inventory system. Then we open up the shop. So that way, like Gears of War 3 comes out, for example, guess what? On launch day, as soon as we open, we already have a few copies of it. Another reason why we also started doing new games is because we had especially when we opened our second location, we had so many people. We had so many people who kept asking, hey, do you pre-order games? Hey, do you have this game? Hey, can I pre-order this game here? Hey, can I pre-order this? Hey, do you have this new game? So we were kind of trying to look at it as like, yeah, we're probably going to lose money on this and the profit margins won't be great. However, we can use it to bring people into the store and especially bring in new inventory, especially if there's people who are going to come in and trade their older games towards a newer game right here. That's the way that we were looking at it. But overall, we didn't do enough numbers with the brand new games to really justify it, in my opinion. However, the reason why we were doing that with Toys R Us, because some people might be thinking you're losing money on this. No, we actually didn't. Now, keep in mind, this back when brand new games were $60 a piece, we would sell them for $55 brand new and sealed. And then a used newer game we would sell for $50, used, of course. So we were a little cheaper than the competition. But I don't remember the exact deal. But I think it was something like Toys R Us consistently had this running. If you bought 3 brand new games, like in one purchase, if you bought 3 brand new games, I think they gave you a $40 gift card. So it was something like that. And then you could use that gift card for another purchase. You couldn't use it on the same purchase, of course. But the thing on top of that was that it didn't have to be different games. So for example, if Gears of War 3 came out, you could buy 3 brand new copies of Gears of War 3 for $180 before tax. And then once you pay for it, they give you a $40 gift card. And what we did was we just started stacking up those gift cards. So you immediately, technically, you kind of see you get a discount there. But even if you don't see a discount, you end up getting those nice, those nice gift cards. And then we just stacked those up and we just kept using those gift cards for new releases. So we kind of had this almost like money exploit that we were using to get brand new games. And I remember after I stopped working there, the employees started to do that more often with newer release games and such. And I talked to my manager at one point and he's like, dude, yeah, like we don't go through these, we don't go through the distributor anymore. We just go to Toys R Us. Like literally the day a game comes out, we just come in a little early. We go to Toys R Us. We buy 3 copies of the game. They give us a $40 gift card. Once we have a few $40 gift cards, we're able to go there and we just keep doing that because we do it so often. We're able to get, free games and we're able to put them in here. And he's like, dude, I don't know why they keep doing that deal. It's a really good deal, but I don't know why they keep doing that deal. I don't know how it is going to be a deal for them. I don't know how they are profiting on that, which I can say there. From what I know with those much bigger stores, they get better profit margins on their games. This might be a little out of date, mind you, but at least about 15 years ago, I had a friend of mine who worked at the Target distribution center, and he told me that Target at the time never paid more than $24 per copy of a game. And those were even like the big releases. Like the latest Call of Duty, it sells for $60. They're buying it for $24 each. And the reason why they're able to buy them for that cheap is because they're buying them directly from, the companies who are pressing them and such. And then it doesn't go to individual stores. Like it's going from pressing plant to distribution center. And then at that point, Target has to then, of course, distribute it amongst all of the other shops and such. So the responsibility is on them, and that's when the cost is going to add up. But also because, obviously, they're buying so much in bulk and they're buying so many copies at once, they're able to get those nice discounts there, which is also how, if you all remember, a brand new game can come out during the summer, $60, and then Target might have it on Black Friday for like $28 or $30, something like that. So that's usually how it's able to be justified. And that's also why we, as a small game store, who we would only buy 2, 3, 4 copies of a game at a time, we were such small scale, we weren't getting those games for $24. We were getting them for maybe $52 if we were lucky. So that's about it with that. That's how Toys R Us ended up becoming our distributor for brand new video games, or our supplier, I guess you can say. So that's about it for this episode here. Clocking in at just under an hour, thankfully. So I thought it might be a little shorter, but it's still under that goal, at least for me there. And let's go ahead and pick a keyword. Now, if you haven't been to the end of one of these episodes before, first of all, welcome. And secondly, I typically pick a keyword or a key phrase that you can use in a comment on the video upload. And if you use this keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Typically, I do pick something that is on my desk here, and I have a nice little stack of this. So how about paper? Let's use that. Do you still write things down on a pen and paper? Do you use a pencil and paper? Do you prefer paper receipts when you go out? Do you want a paper menu when you go to a place instead of scanning a QR code? Let me know by using the word paper in a comment on the video upload, and I'll know that you made it to the end. Anyways, that is about it for this video and this episode and this, I guess, audio file here that you can call it. That's about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. If you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. And until next month.